But
For sure.
it's interesting, Kyle, because within, I believe you're now in spiritual seeing, slow stage 4, where you're, discovering this part of the self where the mind really has limits to it, and then new things emerge. You also, something happened within this year, rather last time we spoke, that you quit alcohol. And I'm very interested in learning how that happened. Is it related to also, stage 1, which is, the external world? And how has that journey emerged? And also, like, socially speaking, with yourself, what have you noticed with all of this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would consider quitting alcohol as like a lifestyle design decision. So like a slow stage 1 intentional living thing. The other thing that I'll mention, I guess, before getting into the alcohol piece is I've done another no insert the blank year for clothing. So I did like a no buy year for clothing where I spent $0 on clothing for a year. And it actually, after the year, it just went to like 16 months and then even longer. And I think I had to break it because I had to buy a suit for like a friend's wedding or something. But it was a really good reset to, at that point, I was really inspired by the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early.
Yep.
And like Jacob Lund Fisker of Early Retirement Extreme, who you've talked to. So that whole movement really inspired me, and I tried to take some inspiration and turn it into practical action. So I did the no buy year for clothing. I seem to have an all or nothing personality type in a lot of ways. So it's a good, if you want to like completely break a habit or change a habit, for me, quitting something cold turkey for 365 days is a great way to do that. And everybody has debates over, how long it takes to build or break a habit. Is it 66 days? Is it 250 something days? Is it whatever? But for me, a year is a nice, start and end, especially if you started at the beginning of a year. But for alcohol, that was a little bit different because it was actually just over a year ago. And actually I just hit the year and 1 month of no alcohol. So I just kept it going so far. But it happened because I realized that even like 1 or 2 drinks, even like 1 or 2 glasses of wine would start giving me a headache, and or I'd wake up with a hangover from like almost no alcohol. Maybe it's just a matter of getting older. I'm in my late 30s now, so maybe it's just that. But it became this kind of repetitive thing where I realized, okay, the net benefit is actually negative now. So the pleasure from drinking is offset by more pain. And whenever the pain is greater than pleasure in life, that can lead to change. So that's kind of what I've realized in a lot of these things. And that's a trigger for so many things, right? Suffering is a great gateway to transformation in any way, shape, or form. It can be small stuff. It can be big stuff. People talk about like turning your wounds into wisdom or turning your trauma into treasure. There are different ways to phrase it, but suffering is obviously a key catalyst, especially on like the spirituality side and things like that. And I didn't realize how common this was. So I described my own existential crisis, right? That was the spark for me. And I actually just recently went through Maria Popova of the Marginalian, formerly Brain Pickings. Her spark was, she's basically my same age, but she got started earlier than I did. But hers was due to depression and dissonance, cognitive dissonance. And funny enough, she worked in marketing and advertising too. Ken Wilber, founder of Integral Theory, his was trying to figure out an escape from what he called the sour life. So literally, like, he was starting to read all of the like existential writings and philosophers and spiritual teachers and things like that when he was younger as a way out of the sour life that he found himself in. So this is very common. And there's a concept that I came across in the last year or so called Transformative Learning Theory, founded by Jack Mesereau. And it was another epiphany moment for me because the whole journey of transformative learning starts with what he calls a disorienting dilemma. So whether it's an existential crisis, the sour life, depression, dissonance, you name it, it can be something big, it can be something small, it can be sudden, it can be gradual. It comes in obviously many different flavors, but a disorienting dilemma seems to kick off the entire journey of all of us. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer of of all of it, but that's how I got into starting the no alcohol year. It was another disorienting dilemma, you could say, of realizing that the pain from drinking was greater than the pleasure, and then that happening frequently enough where you start to realize, like, man, I think I should change something here. And so, like I said, I'm kind of all or nothing personality type, so I'm like, I'm just going to go cold turkey. This was April of last year. I'm just going to go cold turkey and see if I can make it a year without drinking. And my wife actually laughed at the time when I told her that because I hadn't joked, but I had like mentioned in the past, like, I'm going to quit alcohol. I'm going to quit alcohol. Everybody says it right after they have a bad hangover or something. And I had dabbled in it before. I think before this, the longest I had quit was like 45 days. And then before that, I had quit different types of alcohol. So at one point I quit liquor. Another point I quit beer. And then I was wine only for a while. But this one, I just did cold turkey everything. It's actually been really nice. Kind of like, taking the leap of faith into entrepreneurship when you have to explain to people what you do now and you're not even sure how to explain it to yourself or articulate it to yourself.
Yeah.
You kind of get a little bit of that when you explain like why you're not drinking at, parties or whatever. So in the last year, I successfully made it through a bachelor party, a wedding, a family vacation, a wine tasting. So that was probably the toughest one. I went to a wine tasting and everyone else was doing it. And I'm like, I can't participate. I couldn't even do the thing where like, you taste it and then spit it out or something. I was like, no, it'd be too tempting for me.
Yeah.
But these, no insert the blank years can be really helpful. There are tons of them out there. I think even for the alcohol stuff, they call it like sober curious now. Like you're just dabbling in like, what is it like to be sober? But yeah, I've actually really enjoyed it, and to the point where people are like, "Are you going to celebrate with a drink on day 366?" And I'm like, I don't think so. I think I think that would defeat the purpose. But I call all of these like intentional living challenges or experiments. But they can be a lot of fun, and you learn a ton about yourself. And in general, I feel like I'm just much more present with like the situations that I find myself in, even at like a wedding, for instance, where you're the only sober one or something, or one of the only sober ones. Even the conversations that you're having with people, you're just on a deeper level. You're more present. You're more conscious and aware of, the person, the surroundings, what's going on. And yeah, it's been refreshing, honestly, to give it a try.
Yeah. And it's interesting because also, it might, I don't think it's crazy to say that drinking alcohol is also something we just absorbed, something we just adopted, like on social settings, on everything. I mean, alcohol has existed for thousands of years, but we just assumed it's part of life. And then you realize like something so simple, in quote unquote simple, which is difficult in today's world because everyone's drinking, can open this realm of self-exploration and like with other people, being connected with them, being present with them. And it's interesting because it also connects into, like you say, intentional living, but also I'm intrigued because it's also in a way of spiritual seeing that, this is not me. This is not my identity. I'm not a drinker. I thought I was a drinker. I thought I was a marketing official. I thought I was a professional in whatever, in copywriting. I was a summa cum laude in my college. And then all of a sudden, all of those themes, you realize that's not me. Who am I really? And that little spark, like you say, those intentional living challenges can ignite something within your soul, which is truly, truly interesting.